Welcome to the Manitoba Ag Days podcast, featuring speakers from our 2017 event. This podcast features Holly Derksen from Manitoba Agriculture, and her talk is called Navigating the Fungal Jungle, Disease Update.
Thank you, and thanks to the Ag Days Committee for having me come in. Before I start, I have to give credit where credit's due. So this Navigating the Fungal Jungle was not a catchy title that I came up with. It was actually my counterpart in Saskatchewan, Barb Ziesman, who one time, just like in casual conversation, as pathologists have, she mentioned the fungal jungle, and I said, that is a great name, I am going to use that. So that's all Barb. So here's my jungle, and if you were in the field in 2016, you will know what I'm referring to as far as the fungal jungle. So as Keith mentioned, there was a lot of sclerotinia in 2016. Fusarium head blight was a big one. We saw root rots. We saw leaf spots. We saw tan spots specifically. Goss's wilt, which I put a star there because technically it's a bacterium that causes Goss's wilt, so it's not technically a fungal jungle, but bacterial jungle doesn't have the same ring. And bacterial blight is another bacterial disease that we saw in 2016. So unlike Keith, I always put a disease triangle in my presentation, so sorry if that's taken you back to high school, but I'm a pathologist and it's what I do. So Keith went through it, but I'll go through it again. The three things that you need in order to have a disease present, and specifically an epidemic, is you need the susceptible plant, so the host crop, so if you're growing it, you know that you have it, the infectious agent, the pathogen, and for many of the diseases we have here in Manitoba, it isn't usually a question as to whether the pathogen is present. We have tons of inoculum of a lot of diseases, such as sclerotinia. And then the favorable environment, which is the question every year. So in 2016, that favorable environment for fungal diseases specifically, where you like moisture and moderate temperatures, was definitely present. So we had the perfect storm for disease issues in 2016. I'll start with the canola and the canola disease survey. So I have split it out into our different regions as well. I imagine here in Brandon, you're most concerned with the Southwest or Northwest, depending where you came from to be at Ag Days today. But I've included all the regions. Sclerotinia, our top disease in 2016. Blackleg wasn't far behind. Blackleg levels have been pretty consistent, as I'll go through, but you'll see that there really was no hot spot for sclerotinia or blackleg. It's pretty consistent across the province. So that was looking at the prevalence, so that's the percent of fields that show these diseases. And then here we're looking at incidence. So this is how many plants in the field are actually infected. And in sclerotinia, for example, in the central region, we were up to 20% of plants in the field. For blackleg, too, we were around the 15 to 20% range for most of the regions. So definitely you can find it when you go out there without having to look too hard. So blackleg levels in Manitoba. Again, I'm not going to focus on sclerotinia. Keith went through that really well, so I'll just go past that and go right to blackleg. Present in approximately 80 to 90% of fields, according to our survey, and approximately 15 to 20% of the plants are affected in those fields. And our severity average is around 1.5. Now, if you went to the Canola Council presentation on Tuesday by Angela and Justine, some of this will be review for you. But if you didn't, it might be a review anyways. You've seen me speak before. But the studies have shown that approximately 20% yield loss per unit of severity. So seeing a 1.5, that's 20 to 30% yield loss potential. So if you see these severity numbers and you wonder what exactly are they talking about, I've included kind of our rating scale there. So a 20 or 1.5 would be between 25% or less of the cross-section to 25 to 50% of the cross-section actually affected by the disease. So when you see a picture like that, it kind of gives a better idea as to what kind of effect that's having on the plant. You can see how much of that cross-section is actually black from the disease, and obviously that will have an effect on water transport, nutrient transport, things like that, and that's where you get to see that yield loss. So for each of my diseases, I'm going to equate it with a jungle animal because somehow I have to bring it back to the fungal jungle. And so for blackleg, I have equated it with a monkey because you go into any jungle, you find a monkey. I go into any canola field, I find blackleg. So there all the time, have to find a way to deal with it. Host resistance is obviously one of the main ways we deal with blackleg disease in canola. But recent research has indicated the most common R gene in commercial varieties does not react with the majority of the blackleg pathogen population. In other words, it doesn't work. However, we aren't seeing huge epidemics, complete wipeouts of fields due to blackleg, and that's because of adult plant resistance. So although we have these R genes that are interacting with the populations, that's not equaling all the resistance that's available in these plants. We have adult plant resistance that's playing a role as well, which is great. Otherwise, you would be seeing huge wipeouts based on this information. So our current best option has been to rotate our varieties. Rotating your varieties doesn't guarantee that you're rotating your resistance gene, especially given that the research that indicates that we have a very common R gene in our varieties. However, that's the best we could do up till this point. There was information, I think, released today, if you look on Real Agriculture or on Canola Council's website, talking about how we're going to have R gene labeling in the near future. So soon we will be able to say, okay, this variety had this R gene, I want to go to another variety next year that has a different R gene, so I can really stabilize the population. And that is a great option, so something that we're definitely had to move towards in order to be able to effectively control and manage this disease. Okay, now I will move on to clubroot. And no news is good news. So if you didn't hear us talk a lot about clubroot in 2016, that was because we had no new cases of symptoms in crop. We had a couple years where we were seeing it in different locations, actually in the field during the summer, but we didn't have that in 2016. One thing I want to talk about, the fact that we didn't have it in 2016, is often we have seen it now, when we do see it in crop, and it's showing up, it's been in an area of the field which has typically been flooded out. So when we see a drier year and actually get a crop stand in that typically flooded out area, oh my, we have clubroot there. Well, how long have we had clubroot? Well, I haven't had a crop in that part of my field in how many years because of the high moisture. So that could be part of the reason we didn't see it in 2016. I don't want to say that it would have shown up had it been a bit drier and we were able to get crop stands in flooded areas, but we do know that clubroot can come in through waterways, so that could be potential. That's why we're seeing it in these typically wet spots. The grid sampling project that we've talked about in the past is almost complete, and that's where we were getting a soil sample from every township range in the province that has canola production to give us a better idea of where we have clubroot in the soil. So these assays have been done at PSI, which is a lab funded by the Manitoba canola growers in Winnipeg. And out of the 800 assays that were done, 20% came back positive. So we definitely have clubroot in the soils in Manitoba. So I'm calling it our jungle animal, snake in the grass. Obviously, down below it makes sense. The clubroot is there. And the best way to deal with snakes in the grass, I would say, is just to avoid them. So that's also the best way to deal with clubroot. It's important to note, though, that of those 20% of those assays that were positive, 93% of those were under 10,000 spores per gram of soil. And to make that make sense to you, you need more than 100,000 spores per gram of soil to see symptoms in crop. So we're well below that. So again, avoiding clubroot, avoiding the snake in the grass is our best management practice at this point. Here's our clubroot distribution map prior to the newest results coming out. The next slide will show the newest results. So that's what's up on our website right now. We haven't updated the map on the website, but it will be updated shortly. But for Ag Days, Les, who I see in the crowd, got me a map with the newest results. So this isn't the official map that will go up, but it does show a few areas where we have had changes based on this grid sampling project that's gone through, and we've been testing more of those. So I've circled the ones that have changed. If you are now in an orange RM, I would say that you're one of our RMs to watch. A red RM is where we have seen either symptoms in the field or enough spores from a spore sample to potentially see symptoms in the field or from a soil sample. And the orange ones are the level just below that. So without proper management, those orange RMs could turn red. So that's why it's important to get the soil tested to find out what level you're at and best avoid having a disease issue with clubroot. You'll notice that some of our RMs are still white. So if you are a canola grower in an area that you see here that's still white, in a lot of cases, some of those RMs don't have a lot of canola production, but if maybe you are a canola grower in that area, I encourage you to talk to me after, send me an email or come find us in the Curling Club at the Manitoba Ag booth, and you get a free soil sample through the Grid Sampling Project if you're in an area that hasn't been sampled yet.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you at Manitoba Ag Days 2018 from January 16th to 18th.